Ah, welcome to the Hook, a subset of Earful of Dirt, not lineouts. But I've got Tosan Touche-Tomway with me from VileRugby.com. How's it going, T?
Life's good. Can't complain.
So we previewed USA versus Germany. We went long. We went awesome for 2 hours. And hopefully we get a little less today. But we're going to break down two matches and some issues. So for all those at home, USA had a short international campaign, went 1-1 against Germany and the Georgia Lilos. So let's get into preparation a little bit. So wondering when the squad's named. Squad's named about 2 weeks ahead of time. No information on when they're assembling. Nothing. Find out there was no domestic assembly for the U.S.-based players, and they did not come together until the Sunday before the Germany match. They all landed in Frankfurt and then commuted to U.S. Army Garrison and the Clay Kaserne in Wiesbaden, Germany, and had 4 days of practice plus captain's run before the Germany match. So let's get into what kind of team are we, and how does that really affect us when we're going to play not necessarily lower ranked teams, but when we're on a campaign against higher ranked teams and teams such as the likes of Georgia, and how we should prepare for, I guess, the warm-up match.
I think we touched on this in the last show. This is where a lack of identity really hurts us. We are whatever or whoever people tell us we are. And so identity, for better or for worse, is sort of what our default is when the customization doesn't take root, right? The stuff like where we prepare especially for something we want to do and adapt, right? So what do we default to? Not precisely sure. So that being said, having a less than ideal preparation, lack of a domestic assembly, musical chair rosters, when we play teams that quote unquote we should beat, it really diminishes the value of the analysis that we can do afterwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because then what standard are we measuring this against? What are we trying to do? What type of game are we trying to play World Cup 2019 in Japan? What are we going to put on? What product are we looking to put on the field? That's the only way I can really look at this as a success or failure. I look at it as I'm like, okay, 1-1. If we went 2-0, I wouldn't know. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
We were a bounce of the ball away from being 2-0 in this, but then was this the team finding itself and deciding this is going to be its identity? Or at the next assembly, are we going to see a completely different USA team? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we didn't have a domestic assembly. We tend to not have a domestic assembly unless in November, for the November series, unless we're having a match.
Like we're hosting, right?
Have done in Chicago a few times. However, I think, we have so many amateur players that play, and hopefully, we'll see this next year, not this next summer really, but next autumn, really, we'll see what this professional league does for the players, because we saw what it did a little bit last autumn with the one series of pro that, went through, we saw like a better level of play. We didn't really get the results we wanted, but we, I don't want to play higher ranked teams close. I want to beat, if it's not a top 10 team, I know that our athletic matchups are pretty similar, just because you look at where they are and where we are. And to an extent, there's in the back line, when we face Romania and we face Georgia and we face Tonga last year, we have some overmatch, but we just don't have it in like the front row. And that's where historically our problems are. But so what is our system? Well, all of our props were, except for Fry and Waldron. Fry gets a hernia and needs surgery, so he's out. Or basically everyone we used was domestically based. Hulu Mongoloa, Olive Khalifi, and now Patty Ryan. So that's 3 of your props are domestically based. And then one of your hookers is domestically based in Peter Malcolm. So what are we installing as a game plan for those guys? Because they're here. So we can feasibly assemble the team in Texas for cheap, or somewhere else that has a low cost of living, or somewhere else where somebody will throw us up, because there are those people that will throw us up for, for at cost or even less. So, and then we have, all those loose forwards that are, available domestically. And it's like, what is the playbook? And from what I understand, the interim coaching staff, and I'm going to call them the interim coaching staff until Gary Gold shows up and says, Greg McWilliams, I'm keeping you. Dave Williams, I'm keeping you. Sean Pittman, I'm keeping you. Because I don't know. Because as far as I know, Dave Hewitt is going like he's not going to be an assistant head coach for this team. It would be great, but, USA Rugby doesn't pay his bills. The Crusaders do. So he's gone. Like, although I will say, as a head coach, I didn't know what to expect from Dave Hewitt. It was his first time being a head coach of a team at any level. And to an extent, I would say he's acquitted himself relatively well, especially when it came to dealing with Americans overseas. Like I said, our team was at U.S. Army Garrison Wiesbaden. They interacted with soldiers and families in the gym and at the practice field and did a lot of stuff out there. And, the head of MWR out there was talking to, Dominic Budsees, I think. So we were talking on his Facebook page, and he had high praise for the entire staff, had high praise for the players. Like they had a great time, full interaction with soldiers, families, in Wiesbaden. So that was awesome. So they were really impressed by what Dave Hewitt, like how he represented USA Rugby.
Good.
And
That's
and the shirt. So good for him. I didn't know what to expect. It seems that I felt we were set up for failure first with, like, it took forever to announce who was going to be the interim staff. So you have no idea what to expect. So we know who the interim staff is. I like the guys. We talked about that. But it's still, how much different is it going to be in June when Gary Gold comes in to take over? I have concerns there because, he's a systems guy. He's a South African. So I think there might be a lot of similar stuff.
It's going to be a bit of an ideological shift from what we're used, it's going to be a necessary shift.
I think,
because I think that we're a sports systems culture.
Yeah. I think, you know, Mitch installed a bunch of systems, but my question is, how much of that do we keep? Because I think they kept a lot of the same framework. Because, you know, Hewitt, he's Australian, but he, you know, coaches in New Zealand. So a lot of those New Zealand style systems. And for the most part, you know, Mitch has coached a lot in South Africa. So
Right. I'm about to say he's actually kind of like the anti-New Zealand coach, so to speak. If you look at kind of like how he approaches the game, it's actually, I always thought it was kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
But they all have their merits. I mean, we're comparing, you know, the top five, you know, between them, the top 5 places to play rugby in the world.
Yeah. I just wonder, you know, the next guy's cycle, because we talk about often, you know, the 2 years following the World Cup really sort of doesn't matter. You need to qualify. You need to blood new players. But once you've qualified, unless you're in the top 12. Oh, yeah. You didn't know that?
Yeah.
So if you're not in the top 12, you have to qualify, which we did. But I think these 7 games that we're about to, like, we got 5 more. I'm under an interim staff. I wonder how much blooding of players we're going to do in the next 5.
That's why I think what your first question is most relevant, right? Because as I understand it from the birds in my ear, Gold is going to be a long-term interim coach until he moves into sort of a more developmental position, where coaches will also be developed in addition to players in this overall high-performance system, and he would be heading that. So that first question you asked, what is all this going to look like Gold coming in June? I'm interested in what the understanding is coming in, because he knows he's coming. It's not like, you know, this is going to be a sudden handoff. So there should be some communication in this transition, good program management, right? So when we're handing off from project to project, what are the risks that we're already talking about that we're going to deal with? And I'd imagine these discussions, if anybody's worth their salt, they're having them. So if we're thinking about blooding new players, there are probably things on Gary Gold's radar as we speak. Or he might have just given some basic instruction in terms of, okay, blood the following. This is what I need for this system. And they will do the best. They'll, you know, port themselves the best they can in terms of blooding those things, those people to fit that system. Then he'll see who floats and who doesn't. You know?
My concern is for 2019, and I sort of feel that I just wonder if they just punted 2019. Matters. Maybe. I think Gary Gold can do this. I think he can even steal a game for us because we are in a pool, you know. I think he can, like, coach the talent that is available to win a game. My only thing is, like, you're taking a third of the games away that he currently has to prepare for that World Cup.
Exactly. And that was my initial concern when Mitchell was outgoing. That the timing, is this about 2019? Probably not. This is probably more likely about 2021, 2023. Which is actually, in my estimation, that's fine, as long as you're building to a big result in those 2 years. Those 2 World Cup years.
I think unlike 2015, if, you know, I'm there in the room, I'm saying, well, 2019 matters. But that's, you know, whatever we thought was going to matter, because we may have thought Mitch was going to be here for 4 years and up. Well, that no longer matters. So what is our plan to get beyond, you know, the gain line? Gain line being 2019.
Right.
So I think he's.
Can we leave the 2019 World Cup in Japan with momentum?
Yeah, I mean, that's what needs to. That's where we need to be. So, yeah. So like we talked about it, our preparation going into Germany, we didn't like it. I mean, there just wasn't. So there wasn't confidence. I didn't have confidence going into Germany because, you know, they're well drilled. They have their system in place. They've had their system in place. And without, you know, a domestic camp under an interim coach to like install systems to the 2/3 of your players, you know, you're wondering what's up.
Question. Give me 1 second.
All right. So there's that. I'll hit T up when he comes back. He's gonna pop it out. But yeah, so guys, you get into it, and we've only got 2 matches, right? We don't have a domestic test, which sucks because as a revenue perspective, you need the domestic test to make money. But preparation up front, it didn't look like we were set up to succeed. Going into Germany, I had legitimate concerns. I knew that athletically they weren't there. Athletically, we had overmatch the entire way. And when it comes to, you know, the athletic disparity, there was no big deal. My question was, how do we prepare our domestic players to go overseas and play 2 matches against 2 pretty good teams? And I thought either no domestic assembly or just no assembly period really set us behind. So you really didn't know how to judge, like we talked previously in the beginning of the show, is like, how do we judge the preparation versus the result? I felt that Germany could be a trap game. That's what I felt. So,
Sorry about that.
So, yeah, you gotta drink some water so he can tell you everything he knows.
Yeah, right. Hydration is important, folks. You know, you gotta make sure you gotta take it. Get you one of these. You know, knock down about 4 or 5 of these a day. You know, that's how I stay so beautiful. But I think what's really kind of important that I don't even know who these people would be, but I'm thinking, like, I guess stakeholders to lose sight of, right? Whether fans, coaches, players, etc., is if there is a 5-year plan, that means there's 2 World Cups in that cycle, 2 World Cups in 1 prep. If we're talking 5 years from now, who has what role in these situations, and how are we measuring our progress in those various lanes that each one of those people own? because incremental progress is something that people can get overly fixated on, or they can do the opposite and completely ignore it. In my professional life, I say it's like blood sugar. When people have too much, you're diabetic. If you have too little, you're hypoglycemic. And either way, on either end, person does not feel right and doesn't function at the level they need to. So what do? We check our sugar. And we check our, things like our blood pressure, things like that, just like check the oil in our car. And I think that unless there have been very specific measures put in place that align in the direction they want to go, whether it's a 5-year plan, 3-year plan, 10-year plan, this sort of sense of that lost feeling that we have, I think we're going to continually have that. Now, I'm willing to bet that gold will probably install something of that sort. I can't imagine that these discussions haven't happened to some degree already. But I don't know what he has been promised in terms of staff, resources. Is he bringing his guys? Is he inheriting guys? Kind of like what we were talking about before. Because anybody that's underneath that umbrella, all the way down, as Tony has said, from tots to test, what are they hanging their hats on in terms of development besides being athletes that pass an eye test? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're talking about blooding players for 2021 or 2023. That's happening. That should be happening against Germany. That should be happening in this, because we want to have maybe retain how much of the pool for 2021 and then how much of the pool for 2023.
Well, 2021 is the Women's World Cup.
Wait, sorry. Too many.
But yeah.
Well, that still stands.
Yeah, I mean, it's still there. That's still, yeah. But we could talk about that on the Bible Rugby channel, as we have talked about previously. That is another can of worms, because that job, well, yeah.
You know what? They should just give the Rugby channel to me and let me run it. I'm not even bullshitting. Give Rim. Hey, you see the info right here? Hit me. I get it. You got to save the investment, you got to recoup, et cetera, et cetera. Look, professional life, MBA, Masters in Finance, et cetera. I get it. I also know how to manage assets and resources. I'm kind of a media guy. That type of thing. But program planning, beyond just simply licensing and reselling, you might want to consider it. Let's give folks some things to get excited about, because we're doing some pretty cool things. Hint, hint. Sorry, shameless plug.
Yeah. So, yeah, speaking of, I was talking to somebody else. He's like, you should apply for USAR's marketing stuff, because you're everything you're telling me makes sense. I was like, yeah. Why aren't these people making $500,000 a year running RIM doing these things? I wonder. Yeah.
It's funny, right?
And I know about your bonus. All right.
We see you, son. We see you. It's not that, if you produce, I'm not that mad at you.
No, man. If you bring in that money, take your salary.
But it's funny. We had years ago we talked about this years ago. We had a fantastic CMO candidate. Well, I don't know. She kind of was in and then out because Nigel was an idiot.
Oh, Pam.
Yeah.
So Pam this is what gets me. So she's a top 100 CMO in her own I don't know why she wasn't courted to be the RIM CEO. She sits on the board, so I think she's trying to pull the boat in. like it's sinking, and she's like trying to pull it in.
She's the only thing that's keeping it from going nose up.
Yeah. So she was, a top-ranked CMO before taking over. I remember I was reading about this, and like it was called a passion project. She was a top-ranked CMO. I don't think she was top 100 at the time, but she immediately left freaking USA Rugby and became has been a top-ranked CMO at Renner's Warehouse, like since leaving. So.
Well, that's executive talent. Like, that's why there has to be more to what's going on. Maybe they're not able to disclose. I've even talked to her a couple. I mean, every discussion I've had with her, with not all that many, but I'm impressed with what I'm getting there. And it just seems like, are people threatened by that level of talent? Like, I don't get it. Like, she's not even one of those folks that she was already, from what I understand, and they just wouldn't let her operate virtually.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
huh?
I don't know what the deal was, and I really, at this juncture, I don't care. She's made plenty of bread, so good for her. Good for her pulling out of that situation and going.
She might circle back around and take a CEO position one day.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. I don't know why she wasn't courted for that position, because I think we'd be doing a little bit better. Because she, like I said, she is a top 100 CMO in her own right, so she's really busy. She can't do Sternberg's job for him. But
have you ever talked to Highwell?
Yeah, a little bit, not a lot, but he talks. I mean,
we're weakest in development and sponsorship, right? That's our biggest weakness. Because structurally we haven't been sound enough to pitch something that people can get their arms around, right? So that's Marcom, marketing communications, strategic planning, and product development. That's an arm of marketing. Like, these are all things that we think that marketing. We think when people hear marketing, they just think promotion and advertisement. But that's like maybe, depending on the value chain, like 30%, 40% of what's going on. The rest is the revenue that you're bringing in, how are you deploying it, and how are you moving a brand and developing a brand that you're going to put forward as a product. And that product is what you sit in front of Under Armour. That's the product you sit in front of Nike or Exxon or Bay Health Medical or Partners Medical. Like, this is where you go and say, hey, AstraZeneca, you guys made $5 billion last year, and that's where the discussion begins. So, would you like to put a logo somewhere?
I don't know what they're doing. I just know that when it came to both Germany and Georgia, I watched in the native tongue because I did not trust the Rugby Channel's feed, and it went out multiple times.
Yeah, it does.
I know at the last time it didn't go out, but the audio connection, so whatever studio they were in, like, it cut, so you end up listening to not the German broadcast, but just like the pitch side, the crew. And so you're hearing the people, you're hearing all the loud USAs and all the German chants. And I was watching. Okay, I watched the Georgia game on Georgian TV. It was on the main.
Who was that?
I'd rather watch a game in Spanish because it's really exciting. But the halftime show was, you saw like fires and like a bombing in Ukraine. I was like, the news was on, and I'm like,
what? Whoa.
Like, what's going on over there? But it was on the main channel, and we stick it behind the rugby, like we stick it behind that wall. And you look at, so NBC has made a tremendous investment in rugby with their deal with World Rugby.
Thank you, NBC.
Thanks.
Shout out to NBC Sports.
Thank you for doing what you need to do and getting rugby available. for a good price. However, for those that don't know, 3 rounds of the Six Nations will be on Peacock. 1 game.
No, where?
The Peacock.
Oh.
So
legit.
yeah.
So, NBC, not NBC subsidiary.
So you'll have, I think all the games will be broadcast on NBC and NBCS. Well, so there's going to be 1 game on NBCSN each weekend, 1 game on NBC to include, and then the 3rd game, like you get all the games on Gold.
Yeah.
But so the 3rd game will only be available on Gold.
Yeah.
But to include,
it's a little better than it's better than the BBC, what we were getting before.
Yeah. Well,
like we would get like 2 matches on BBC, but they were never live.
Yeah.
Is what it
was. And they were never live, and they'd be on at
midnight.
Like late. So but yeah, so to include on St. Patrick's Day, England versus Ireland.
Yeah, that's good.
So the reason why only 3 of the rounds are going to be televised is because of the Winter Olympics.
Okay. Yeah, NBC has both. So if we demand more money, we bump them. That's kind of the thing. We don't demand enough airtime, so to speak.
So you can't. I mean, with the way NBC does the Olympics, I mean, you're asking for a 2-hour gap to put a rugby game in. What is the market like in the United States right now? Well, not enough for that 2-hour gap in their program.
It's a frontier market, let's put it that way.
So back to Germany. It ended up going how we thought it would if we, if it went to an extent, went perfect overall. But for about 20 minutes, it looked bad.
Yeah, remember? Yeah. I shot you a message. I said, look, like I didn't put it in the message itself, but what I was thinking when I said that, look, Germany defends well. If we play like we believe we're better than Germany, we'll lose.
Yeah. They made the field narrow.
Yeah.
And then, the turning point really for me, we achieved parity in the set piece, especially in the 2nd quarter. And then the turning point really was that Blaine Scully try that took us in with the lead.
Yes. And then we gained momentum.
Without that, I don't know. Really don't.
Well, remember my prediction was USA by 5. And I was thoroughly, after the first half, concerned that we would see a draw. As labored as some of the things that we were trying to do weren't coming off. Yeah. Because it wasn't, there was no issue in my mind of effort or anything like that. I think we actually played very hard both matches, actually. Kudos to that. But I don't think that's ever really been our problem as much as we take a lot of time to gel. And that's not just in the assembly sense and organization-wise, but in matches, we don't really get clicking in our continuity until after a few knocks. So getting up and rolling. So, delivery ends up being slow. Centers are taking ball under pressure. And the work rate of the forwards has to be much higher to just simply hold parity at that point in the loose. Getting back, and then you have a penalty count issue at that point. The breakdowns become less and less manageable. Shout out to Davies. I think he did what he could do, given what little continuity they could build as a group together. But the 9-10 connection, I think, is a direct product of our lack of continuity that we have 1 through 9.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? It's not as much of an issue of anybody's particular mechanics, that nobody's mechanics are perfect. I mean, we all coach this game. Everybody can get better. But as a system and people executing in groups and units, we're not quite clicking yet.
Yeah, I think we saw, especially in the Georgia match, not really to jump ahead, but we saw that level of continuity with 9-10 connection. And it's one thing we haven't. What I would like to see is 9-10 sub as a unit.
Really?
Yeah.
So they're attached to the hip. They're in pairs.
Yeah. And, we talk about this a lot with, England talks a lot of, like, you see it a lot with England. So the front row, the props are both Harlequins for the starting front row.
Right.
And when they get subbed out, like, they're subbed. I don't know who the second guys are, but it's funny because they perform way differently. The front row at Harlequins performs a bit differently than the front row in England. I mean, there's just a difference when you fit pieces together, because it's not just, like front row scrummaging. It's also how the locks work with, the three up front, and the flankers work with the three up front and all that stuff. Because, you're putting together a select side out of a pool of 400 professional England qualified players, and you're selecting 35 to be on your EPS, right? So that's until we get to that point where we have that many 9s and 10s playing professionally, because MLR hasn't started. We don't have a scrum half that is professional.
Right.
We have 10 that's professional. Up front row, currently the only professional we have that's healthy is Dino Waldron. T. Lamosatelli, he played an A-League match he played 55 minutes this week. And, someone asked me, he's like, well, if he played that A-League match, why wasn't he fit for the Eagles? I was like, well, I think he's played 90 minutes this whole year since like that's the longest he has played since like his rehab has started. So he's not in international form, and his neck surgery was pretty rough, and so like Saracens have been taking it really slow. So I don't think he wasn't ready for international rugby. That's just my opinion. But so if we don't have all these pros in a system that allows them continuity, maybe not like playing the same exact system like they do, down south, where you have so many. I would say 50% of the system is used in the Super Rugby franchises in New Zealand are coached from when they're playing U5.
Right.
Like they're just playing these New Zealand things from the very beginning. And I'm not saying we need to get there, as it would be interesting, but I think our population package is too big to where if we eventually grow that like player population, that we would want to do that. Because, one of the things we talk about in football is like there's so much variety in the systems that makes it different. And it allows you to out scheme things. It's a little different in rugby because it's a fluid motion sport. And in essence, as Alan Yarde says, lots of offense and lots of ball control. Like you don't ever have to give up the ball.
No.
So
it's 15.
You know, you never have to give up. You never have to give up the ball. So that's something to think about when it comes to game planning and offense. Because I asked about cross kicks with him, and he was like, well, I mean, maybe. If I think he's the kind of guy, if he's going to use kicking, he's kicking and chasing.
Sure.
He's not trying to punt it deep in the backfield to give it away. If he's kicking it, he's intending to catch and score. Like that's what he's intending to do, which is interesting. But so we end up achieving parity and a little bit of overmatch. I thought Dino Waldron acquitted himself really well. I don't think he needed to play 65 minutes. I think Patty Ryan needed to play more in that match.
I would have liked to have seen more of him too. I agree.
Because, I mean, to an extent, I think they're about even, but he didn't, like, against Germany, they were fine. So I wanted to just see more minutes with Patty because he hasn't played a lot since he's been capped this last summer. You know? And then I had concerns about Khalifi. And some people are like, well, you know, he played really well. And I'm like, what are you watching? As a runner? Shit. Like as a runner, he was good.
Right.
But that's not what I judge props on. I judge props at the ruck and I judge props at the scrum. I want my forwards, I want my props to run, I want my hooker to run, be able to run with the ball. All the time. Like punish the opposition. Big boys run the ball is awesome, but that is not your primary job.
Correct.
And he was sort of losing the battle, in my mind, especially in the back half, against the tight head of Germany, who was a lot smaller.
It's a much better scrummager.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. Khalifi is not he's been a decent scrummager on a team that has struggled to find people that can scrum. And that's where I kind of like. You see what I mean?
Yeah, and the problem with him is, so he's a utility prop. He can play both sides. I think if a world-class prop in general, as we saw with the Wales issue, we're out of props, they're injured. And they weren't, you know, they didn't have cramp. They were like warming up like 10 minutes before that. Just keeping it, just jogging, you know? But so world-class at your job, loose head or tight head, and in an emergency, be able to effectively play the other side. And so Khalifi has been a utility prop where he sort of plays both sides, but he's really a tight head. And we were asking a natural tight head to shift over and play loose head. And which would have been okay if he had played a lot of loose head, you know, with Seattle in the past like 2 years, in the past 18 months since he's sort of been out of the pool. But every match I watched this year, he played tight head.
Yeah.
So if you play some, you know, to where you keep that muscle memory going, that's fine. But you're asking a dude who plays tight head to slide in because he has played in the past loose head at an international level. It's completely different, especially going from amateur club to test rugby. So that was my concern there. And this is the problem we ran into. I thought he left the field hurt against Germany late. And we needed to sub in Mangaloa a lot earlier. because he only played 10 minutes against Germany. So I didn't get any kind of sample size, and their scrum was already pretty much battered in those last 10 minutes of the match. So you have no idea what this guy who if I'm listening to this Welshman who there's a Welshman who lives in England, and he knows so much. Cardiff RCM, shout out. He knows so much about like the player pool and who's available in the United States. I'm like, what? Like, I'm sure he was on his radar, but in general, most people were like, huh? This guy from Life West? I don't really know much about him. Like, so didn't really see much from him. Loose forwards, Duratalo, Landry, Lambourne, Quill, all played really well to an extent, especially in the second half. But in the first half, we were just, I don't know. For those first 20 minutes, we just, I don't know. I thought it was going to get bad. So, but going into the second half, we started punishing their backs, started playing running rugby, and it opens up, and we end up winning 46-17, 46-12. Yeah. So yeah, so I had a bunch. We had a bunch of concerns. So what did you think of the locks, especially during Germany?
I thought generally our locks play quite well. I don't think that's the best pairing that we could have had, but I think also if there is the sort of investigational approach of figuring out what combinations are going to work, I think that's fine. I think they're trying to figure out who their best pair are, and I think that overall, Germany-wise, as far as Germany goes, I mean, effective enough, if we can put it that way. The job got done, and it wasn't especially. It wasn't something that stood out as especially deficient or anything like that. I mean, there was one play that sticks out in my mind that should have been a try. When guy's been injured, came back recently, played mostly in Australia, makes break, that needed to finish, but that's a continuity thing. Outside of that, we had possession. It was just not continuous. It was not continuous, impactful possession. So I'm kind of like defaulting. It's kind of a cop out, but I'm defaulting more to the tight five and the unit play of the forwards to color how I'm looking at what those locks did in that match. Does that make sense? On their own, every player on their own did reasonably well. That's the thing. But the one thing that we didn't do as well as we should, and that makes sense because of the assembly issues, is how well we collaborate and work well together within the system. You see what I mean? So that's literally how my ratings kind of look like that.
Yeah. I wouldn't. Greg was all right against Germany. He's just a big man,
right?
And broke his leg last year. I just don't know if he was ready with how much he played. I didn't see it, and I think we're trying to figure out who we pair with Civetta
Right.
And, I think they're trying to pull Landry out of playing 4 and play him a lot. Just he's going to play 6.
Right.
And to be honest, I mean the pairing that we were seeing a lot was Quill and Lamborn.
Mm-hmm.
And Landry plays a lot of 4 for Glendale, but still, plays a lot of 4 for Glendale. Quill plays 7, but still with a lot of running and a lot of enforcing. And it really works well to push him at 6 in international rugby.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that. I wasn't comes on, no issues there. And Landry, slides over. I was wondering why Breakley wasn't available for Germany. Because, and we'll get into that against Georgia. But Quill comes on, slides over. Go do what you do. I would have liked to seen Samu in camp with Germany, but he played 80 minutes for Toulon that weekend.
Yeah.
So that's how he's ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And
they say fit. He's fit. He's match fit.
Back-wise, against Germany, I don't really have much to say because we ended up getting that fixed. We ended up getting the ball out, being athletic, punishing their backs because all of our backs except Teo are big boys. They're not Fiji big, but they're big boys.
Yes.
And, so we did what we needed to do there. But I really have not really critical of how they performed. I think I'm starting to see a lot more from Davies.
Time.
I think, yeah, time. If you just leave him alone. Just quit switching Davies and Augsburger. Because there needs to be a defined rule. And I think Mitch didn't figure out a defined role, or in his eyes, they were just even. And what we saw was, I would say, guys trying not to lose their job rather than just competing for their job when they would start.
Okay.
That's what I think I was seeing a lot in the last 18 months. I think Davies is the guy. I think the next person to push for that job is going to be Youngert or De Haas.
Okay.
They're fast, man. Like those two dudes, like their ball speed. So we'll see. Especially, we got the MLR season coming up, and Youngert is going to play for New Orleans, and De Haas is going to be entering. Shit. Not even. He's only like 6 months into being in the Cheetahs Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually he might break out onto that Pro 14 side. So
interestingly enough.
Yeah. So I think Davies has gotten a lot better because, I think we're starting to see what he can really do. But for a while, I've been critical of how slow he has been as well.
Mm-hmm.
AJ, I don't know. His foot was good against Germany. Like, everything. So, nothing there. And I think, anything else?
Mm-mm.
All right. So we're gonna go to Georgia, and this is where it gets funny. I put out like a 20-minute spot before I flew to San Diego for Thanksgiving, and I had my concerns. So, like I said, Khalifi leaves injured. Pretty sure the way he was walking, he was injured. And they made a call up. Dylan Fawcett from Old Blue, New York. They named him as a hooker, not as an 8-man, although David Tamilau was released. We did not see David Tamilau at all, but he was released back to RC Narbonne because of an injury. I guess he suffered an injury in camp. And
that's the difficulty with the lack of continuity in assembly. It's risky.
Yeah. And then Mose Falau went back to the Claremont Academy as well. The only people to come into camp were Semu Manoa. Talk about the Manoa effect, and there was a definite Manoa effect. And Dylan Fawcett. Although on social media you see Old Blue New York pumping up that they had 5 Eagles on the ground, one of those being Tony Purpura. No communication out there if he was called into camp to be a camp body or just called into camp in general and just didn't earn the spot. But, he was in shorts, looked like he was healthy, captain's run type picture because they were in the stadium the day before. But I don't know. If you're just telling me, hey, decide to take a little vacay for Thanksgiving, go see the boys. Obviously, I have Adidas kit, whatever. Just say, hey, just information from the office where it's like, hey, Tony Purpura is unavailable. Like, there was nothing out there about whether he was unavailable, and he looked available.
Right.
He looked healthy. That's my problem. There's that. And what was it? No Cam Dolan on the roster for Georgia, which we'll talk about. He is the kind of athletes that I call choice athletes. That, like, you're telling me he's not on the 23? Really?
That's what I'm confused about. It seemed like Manoa was used to spell Cam, and I wanted to see them together.
I know he can play lock.
Yeah. Both of them can.
Seen it. Played for Old Blue. Semu Manoa plays lock. I know Cam can play loose forward. He can play a 6 or a 7.
Or an 8.
He's one of those guys. So what? Tell me what's up. Did he get injured in camp? I don't know. But so all of Khalifi's the starting loose head, Joe again at hooker, and Dina Waldron starts. Khalifi goes out with an injury at minute 6. And then Hulu Mongoloa has to scrum in his second match for 766. So he got a card. Dina Waldron had to come back in and play a little loose head while he was out. So that kind of, but so he played 60 minutes straight. Obviously, you have halftime in there, right? But he went in at minute 6, and got a card at 66 minutes, and then came back in for the last 6. Or last 4 minutes of the match. For a guy who was a little small, I mean, he's got the height, 6'1". He's like 230. And he's lean. It might be strong enough, but he's definitely – I mean, the guy he was going up against had like 30 pounds on him. And like all of those props are just massive human beings. I thought he acquitted himself well for it being his second match, but we did not manage his time to prepare him for that eventuality, which is where I go into. It's like, hey, you have 23 bodies. You're going to have to use them all for Georgia. And we didn't really manage that time well against Germany, I thought. So at the back end of the match, no Dolan, not sure why. I would have, to be honest, if you're gonna make him play lock, I would have put him in over Brakely, just on the roster. That's just my opinion. I would have taken him over Nate. Nate's a great player, and there's a reason why he's on the roster. But I would have just taken him over Brakely for that if you were going to put Peterson in. But to be honest, I thought Peterson should have – I don't know. I didn't really see him do much against Georgia. So in hindsight, I sort of wish that he had started on the bench. That's to be honest. Nick played a really good game. No issues there. Landry, man. It's nice having these two dudes with white scrum caps out there because you always see them like hit people. You see when they're running the ball, you just Big Joe and Big Ben. They're just going out there and, smashing. It's great. I liked a bit of the 1-3-3-1 we were running, and even some of that 2-4-2 with our hooker and props out wide. It gave us a bit of a matchup disparity when Joe was running into a wing. It's kind of nice. And that's sort of, something that we need to work on. But it was like one of those things we all of a sudden just started doing. We didn't have the practice to run that effectively. I did like seeing it, but sort of wondered what was going on. Backline starters were the same, except you had Blaine Scully flipped to fullback and Teo to open side wing. Man, when Teo got the ball, he didn't score, but man, I just look at him and I don't think he's fast. And then you get him the ball.
Good things happen.
And things happen. And
that's why I like having him around.
And he's got great vision, man. He's got great vision, which I liked. So I really like him playing. I really like Teo playing 14, to be honest. Blaine played really well at fullback. I like having a massive fullback. That's just what I like. Laid out some hits. Did really well back there. Matias, no issues. Dangerous, does what he does. And then our centers did their job. Went with a 6-2 split of forwards to backs. The only backs we had were Will Maggie and Nate Augsburger. Maggie comes on in the second half, about midway, I think. And then what I didn't like is Nate only came on at like 78.5. Like, I didn't like that. Like, I don't know whose responsibility that is going to be, but that is not how I like to play.
Good question. Because I mean, once again, we were talking about earlier, what is our identity going to be? And that can be situational, right? It depends on what type of game we're playing, what type of opponent we're playing, but that's where these questions get answered, you know?
So, saw Patty Ryan comes in, I think, about like minute 55, so like minute 60. Played really well. I just wish that he'd gotten more time against Germany, but even though he got limited time against Germany, I thought he played really well. After Dina Waldron like really having to scrum and play, like Dina Waldron played really well, but he had to put in effort. I think, having him play at the London Scottish, like I said the last time we met, has been really like I wouldn't know if it would be beneficial if it had been beneficial yet, but I think against Georgia it really showed what being in a professional system day in and day out and playing, at the second level of English rugby, like what that does for your development as a prop. He it showed. And, Dina and then Patty Ryan just having been an Aviva prop with both Newcastle and Bath for a short time, it played like we worked well at tight head. I think our tight head situation is we don't have that guy yet, like to where he's going to be it. But we have some guys that can, play at a high level, which is better than where we've been, I think. Loosehead, like I said, Khalifi went out, so at minute 6. I mean, I can't really judge his performance.
Mm-hmm.
There was like one scrum in the first 6 minutes. I can't really judge anything. I said Mongoloa played well. But that's based on no sample size, not knowing. That's based on, throwing an amateur into, playing against a world-class pack. So I think he grew a lot, but I mean, yeah, that's where that one is. Joe, good match. Peter Malcolm subbing in. We had some guys that we subbed in that could provide lift, and what annoyed me wasn't like the lift. The lift occurred. What annoyed me though, and I think you can talk to this more than I can, was the second quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Where we had a man advantage for the most of the second quarter, and for about 4 or 5 minutes, we had a 2-man advantage against Georgia, closing out in the second quarter of the game. After we had scored first and it looked like we were about to set the tone, and, Georgia figures it out and they start to stop us, and we start playing like ass. We start playing bad. And then they take 2 cards in 5 minutes in the second quarter.
Right.
And we concede a score when we're up. When we have 14 on 15. And then we concede a second score when we have 2 men. So they're playing 13 on 15. They couldn't smell the blood.
Mm-mm. Well, part of that is when people are comfortable at operating in structure, like what do they usually say, right? Part of it is intensity, and everybody knows what time it is, right? It's we're up 2, we're up 1, we have the advantage. But what do coaches always say? This is what I always say. Okay, this is where the structure always works. We have the structure to create our space and have our man advantage. We already have one. So go through the phases. They will run out of numbers. So all you need is you need less continuous phases now to get your result. And that's where it's just we could not hold that together at that point.
I mean, so we turned the ball over when we had the ball, when they had, they got that second card. And somehow they're able to out-scrum us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I know their backups are good. That's not a problem.
Right.
But so for those at home that don't know, when a prop gets a card, when a front row gets a card, you need to replace them.
Correct. So and they usually sub off a flanker to do it.
Yeah. So brought in, well, they couldn't do that in this time because they had already lost a back. This is so they had to sub off. I think they subbed off one of their centers. I'm not sure. It was rough, but yeah. So they sub off. So they bring in their another prop, another tight head, and like so Mungaloa is going up against Chilachava. Like I'm laughing hysterically because we're talking at people that play like this the scrum they had is like people that play 60 minutes, in a top 14 match every week. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so
I get it. Like
Mungaloa is going up against Chilachava the entire time, and then Chilachava gets a card. And this is where it gets real dumb. Like after Chilachava comes back in, but in the second half, I forget who their backup tight head is, but he was boring into Malcolm. So had an extra long bind, and he was boring into Malcolm. So it made it look like Mungaloa was infringing, and Mungaloa didn't even get warned. There wasn't even a warning. Gets a card.
Mm-hmm.
Like there wasn't even a penalty and a restart. It was boom. I was like I'm watching this scrum and I'm going, why did he just blow the whistle? There's if anything, Mungaloa is getting a little beat, but he's not doing anything. And then he cards him. I'm like, what the? As you guys say, as we all say in the front row, I don't really cheat because I can't. But first, the most important thing about playing front row is knowing how to cheat.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, I say, or even in given the situation that Georgia was in, stall. By time, you're down 2 players. How long can we extend can we extend till we get to 80 minutes?
Well, I mean, they didn't even need to stall. Like that was the problem. They win. So after that, so they get the ball back. We scrum, after they take Chilachava out and replace him, and it was our put in. They get the ball. and they score in quick succession. This isn't the All Blacks. This is Georgia, who has a bunch of I mean, for the most part, their backs are pedestrian. Most of their backs play in their amateur club system at home, or they're playing limited minutes in the Pro D2 and lower levels of professional French rugby, Federal 1, Federal 2, Federal 3. So outside of other than their centers, their centers played really well. Their centers actually matched up decently with Brocky and Campbell. I think Brocky and Campbell are gonna need 5 deep tissue massages in a row after that one. But because that was a physical matchup for those two. But I understand the space generated when you lose a player, and especially watching the All Blacks, how they're able to, when they lose a player, are able to force turnovers and force you to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. But the moment the first card gets handed out to Georgia in the second quarter, it was like the engine stopped. And then, they scored. What? Turnover, 5 more minutes goes on. We're playing with the ball. They hand out a card. Chill chop. And then they score again. And then after that, closing out, when we just have a man advantage, had nothing. So we got listless, I think, right after the first card, because there was about a minute and a half where we got this close to scoring. And then after that, we're done. They stopped us and they turned it on.
Mm-hmm. Well, it goes back to the craziest part of that entire thing is, sometimes I guess maybe this is something with younger teams, but coaching college, a lot of the times when teams get more excited, they get less precise. And when reality, when we have that advantage, our precision is our most valuable weapon. Do we hit the shoulders that we want to hit? Do we make the passes that need to be made? And do we cross the gain line with the timing and recycle with the timing that's necessary to exploit it? It's a simple thing when you're up, but then throw into the mix the defense is at their most intense, because they know that they're willing to try and take risks. They need to turn over the ball. They're going to slow the ball down dubiously or legally, whichever way the referee is allowing. And these are the things how well do we address just at the breakdown? How well do we clear? Do we put that extra person in? Or do people stand off waiting for the ball to move it wide instead of taking the time to say, okay, we're going to do this in 4 phases instead of trying to do it in 2? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's can we put together the phases until because think about it, even down 1, right? We run a classic Northern Hemisphere 16-phase barrage successfully. Aj has a shot at goal. That's just how that ends up working. And then we win by 2. You see what I mean? But that's a team that in their identity have worked together. That scenario is so well rehearsed. That scenario has been prepared for multiple times. No different than when Johnny Wilkinson sat back in the pocket and won it for England. They rehearsed that over and over and over and over and over again. That if you took those old guys and put them on the pitch right now, they'd do it and they would execute it with a reasonably high efficiency. That's where we're just not there yet. But as we have more guys playing together and understanding the moments, a lot of the things that we left on the pitch, because we did leave a fair amount on the pitch against Georgia. That's what made that game so frustrating. It was still there. And then we got the man advantage. Then we got the second man advantage. The 2-man advantage. And, we score in the corner at that point. Which, okay, I could take tries on the wings. But I guarantee you that Georgia was absolutely fine taking tries on the wing in that situation. So we took what they gave us. That means we didn't necessarily create it. You see what I mean?
Yeah. It was.
But once again, taking what's on offer, it's there. Okay, I just made those conversions before. But once again, it's like when we said frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, so if we're calmed down, right? Should have been able to, even if we were going to play that way, pick and go, pick and go, pick and go. Should have been able to get a try out of at least that 15-minute period where we either had a man or a 2-man advantage. Mm-hmm. We should, because if we get one try, we win by 4.
Correct. And
so that's where, I get really annoyed about like just the performance and, we shouldn't be here. Like, we shouldn't be here. Like, we should be able to, which says a lot about, the progress of where our system is for the development of our athletes, for the development of the national team. You and I have talked about it on Viral Rugby about where the women are. Mm-hmm. Women shouldn't be where they are. They've gone backwards. That's not because of them. That's not because of the athletes.
It's administrative.
That's an administrative problem.
Yep. Strategic planning.
Because of the athletes, we got to the semifinals. Mm-hmm. So we have the athletes to get to the semifinals. What we don't have is the administrative support to create a finalist year in and year out on the women's side.
Right. And there's sort of a lack of a lot of things, but the other part being the political will to hold to account provision for feeding our sisters. Like I said in the video a few months ago, that there's no household on earth that I can abide that would ever be run by me or anybody in my family where the brother eats but the sister doesn't. Sorry. And I get that these are per event things, but God bless, these women were fundraising up to the day of to get on before they got on the flight.
Well, the hand was still out throughout the tournament.
Right.
And my problem with that, let's be real here. There's a lot of people complaining that the men are eating. They're eating oatmeal, and that's it.
Oh, sure, certainly. The
problem is like the men are eating oatmeal and the women are eating nothing. The men aren't eating steaks and the women are eating nothing. Like there is there a disparity? Yes. We have an administrative problem that affects both. So I can talk to you. We can talk all about that. All the time. I beat that drum every week, every day.
I look at it like this. We're taking their SIP money every year.
Yeah.
And either we're saying we have a united stakeholdership or we don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they're signing the same check. And at some point, and I get that marketing the sport for women and men, there are differences in how you're going to go about sponsorship. But that's, once again, strategic planning and marketing. You bundle this as something that you can provide.
Well, I've argued, and so we look at in a World Cup year, and even outside of a World Cup year, what the women's soccer national team can command.
Mm-hmm.
They get good ratings. They get good attendance.
Right.
They may not get the same attendance outside of World Cup year and outside of qualifiers that the men do, but they still get good ratings and they still get good attendance.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that has been because the product has been marketed. Part of that is because the product is marketable.
Right.
And our women's team, I've argued, is more marketable than the men's team because the men have never gone to a quarterfinal.
Right.
I mean, the men have in the World Cup era, the men have 2 gold medals. But guess what? How many people were alive in 20? How many people no? So I mean, the men have hardware, but the men don't have a World Cup trophy. The men don't have World Cup silver medals, like multiple World Cup silver medals and a bronze medal. Men don't have that hardware. So that makes, because they have that hardware, that makes them a marketable property, and they haven't been taken care of.
And a lot of missed opportunities there, right? Because even when they were performing basically invisibly, they were flying to these places and winning it all, and nobody knew what was going on until oh crap, these women are pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think as much as hardware is valuable, the most valuable asset is the media. Being able to see the product. What launched the U.S. women's soccer team were visible moments, and that's the most valuable thing that we have in sports, like our memories. When we remember when Michael Jordan did this, or we remember when FloJo had her nails. We remember these iconic situations that people build relationships with. That is what branding in any manner is always going to be about, and sponsors are looking for that, where people can have moments where they see the amazing, the entertaining, the etc. And then the hardware becomes a little bit less, not necessarily less important, but it becomes an accessory, because the moments with the hardware are really what we're looking for, right? Drinking out of the Stanley Cup, the popping champagne after the World Series. Look at all of these visible moments that live forever. And in the American sports media, where we are probably the most voracious consumers of digital media in sport, we're just getting maybe the past 2 World Cups of women playing rugby at all.
So,
in terms of media.
We talk about iconic moments, right? So the iconic moment for the women soccer team, right, was the 4-4 tie in the Rose Bowl, 1999. Down to PKs, one person left to kick before they go to a second round of 5 PKs, right?
Yeah.
Brandi Chastain curves that thing in there. She's on her knees. She rips her shirt off. And the picture you see on the front page is her, arms up, shirt off,
Triumph.
On for you people at home, just to let you know. But she's like this after, scoring penalty kicks. That's that iconic moment in print.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 1991 World Cup, the women paid for themselves, right? And then when they came home from the Netherlands after winning, no recognition. So, their iconic moment is in some archives in a paper in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
So there's things like that. Back to where were we? But so preparation and what is our identity. In the second half, we played really well. We end up scoring at the end, and it comes down to us being down 1, and we got what they gave us, which was a try on the wing. And this is more of a AJ's grade for the match. He misses that one.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think he missed all of them. If I'm not mistaken. Maybe I am.
Mm.
Let me look. Let me find this thing. There was actually stats of some kind for that game. Tofiti had 2 tries. Tofate, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. His production was excellent.
Talking like a British guy, but Joe Tofate had 2 tries. Let me look at this. That's 10, I think. Here we go. Try. Yeah. Yeah. So no, he didn't miss all of them. I'm dying. So missed the first one. Missed penalty. Got the that's right. So missed about half his kicks. I think it was 3-2. Missed 3 kicks, made 2 kicks. One was a penalty and one was a conversion. We had 2 penalty kicks. He went 1 for 2 on penalty kicks. And 1 for 3. Yeah. There's 2 for 3 on total kicks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not on AJ. This is not on AJ. I'm just
no.
I'm analyzing. I'm for anyone who wants to know. This is not on AJ. He missed a bunch of kicks. Sucks. Just how it is. So I don't know what it was. His kicking was off, and he's had a great year kicking for Sale. So was what it was. But if he makes one of those other kicks, shoulda, woulda, coulda, we win.
Correct.
And this is just, the way the match went. Missed that kick at the end, extra time, because they have to kick the ball off to us. They get the ball back, they kick it out, done.
Right.
Brakely comes in for Peterson. For the most part, plays really well. I felt he was a little rusty. Peterson wasn't giving me much for this match, to be honest. He's just sort of a big guy, kind of floating.
Floating and thumping.
Yeah. And, I would have liked to have seen Lambourne start rather than Quill. Just the way things went in the first half to provide like that extra leadership up front. But I thought Quill played decently in the first half. No real issues there. Let's talk about Samu Manoa, though. How good was he?
I think he like I said, we talked about him being match fit, right? He was match fit, and the pace of the game for him with ball in hand and organizing, etc., was at the pace that we're going to want to play if we're going to play our way out of tier 2. But we need to be able to do that as a unit. So plenty of go forward. He was himself, and I think that was an important thing in terms of us maintaining parity with Georgia's pack. There was no way that we were going to out finesse the physicality of Georgia. We don't have the continuity for that. But we had to compete enough up front, and Samu Manoa was, for all my money, the reason we were able to do that in the loose.
I thought he played really well. Didn't really know what to expect. I mean, he's come back from Toulon. You get older, things break, they take longer to heal. He wasn't healed up. Like, he would have barely been ready to play last June.
Right.
But he wasn't cleared to do anything. So it took a little bit into the summer to heal up. Started playing early for Toulon. He's been in form. One of the reasons why his paycheck is so big is so that he plays 80 minutes from time to time. Well, actually, not from time to time, but very often.
Yeah. And he can do it 4 through 8.
Yeah. So, the presence, the Samu effect, there was lift with him on the field. What he can do by himself was there.
Whew. Yeah. Which is a tragedy that we didn't get to see him and Cam. That's a pack.
Yeah. So if you give me loose forward, if you give me so second row, back row, you give me Landry at 4, Civetta at 5, Dolan at 6. I mean, you can sort of like switch around Landry, Dolan.
You have all kinds of configuration.
You can do a lot of things there. Dolan at 6, Lambourne at 7, and Manoa at 8. Whoa.
Right.
That is about as good as it's going to get when it comes to locks in a back row. I would say, in all of tier 2 and in some of tier.
I'm about to say, off the bench, bring on Durtalo, like that type. Like like as effective as a group of people you can put on a pitch as a back as a back 5. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And then you have Quill and Durtalo as loose forwards that are available to come in. That's a combination. A combination of those 5, like for a back 5, is what I'd want to see. Right. That's what I want to see. I don't know if we'll get Manoa during the ARC. The best competition we will face during the ARC is the Argentina 15. So if Murad says you're available for one match, I want to see him on February 3rd because that's where I'm going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles for applied for the old press pass.
Any word yet?
No. You said you applied? Nothing?
Yeah. I applied to all of them. Sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't.
Yeah. So gonna be there whether I get the press pass or not, because gotta take the lady. Allowed as much, you can do as much rugby you want as long as I get to come stare at the boys' butts.
That's freaking hilarious.
She was like, she has a favorite. She was like, oh, Bryce, score. Try Bryce.
That's
in the second half, so going into so that's about as effective and is about the best we could do for back five. I felt, especially in the first half, that they neutralized our back line by playing the way they played. And we fell into playing a forward dominant game with them.
Yep.
Rather than just trying to meet them and gain parity and get the ball out.
Mm-hmm. And that takes
because I know for a fact our back line has more fitness and is better than theirs.
Yeah, I'm about to say more. I would say more dangerous. Our center pairing, they played well, but I mean, I think they were still underutilized in terms of what in terms of the Georgia match anyway. I mean, they had to defend their asses off, but that's sort of a lot of when you don't have the continuity you need. It's like if we've all played select side matches. We played them when we're winning by a lot. We've also probably played them when we're under a lot of pressure. We're under a lot of pressure. That's where the lack of continuity is often exposed. And that's where you need that. You can't afford that extra second.
Yeah. And what we're seeing, I think, overall is I think we're sort of settled in the back line, to be honest. At this juncture, I'd like to see certain players.
I think they need to play together, keep playing together. That's going to be the most important.
They need to keep playing together. I think Matias is going to be he's young. I think he's the 11 for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Our center pairing,
creative, defensively sound,
Bryce Campbell, Marcel Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
They're good.
Mm-hmm.
I liked seeing Blaine play fullback. Teo, I mean, he made things happen, but here's something happened with Josh Whippy. He was in Germany, wasn't named aside.
Mm-hmm.
And then
could be anything.
I don't know. I just know that there was no mention of Josh Whippy at all. And I wanted to see him because he is fast, he's big, he's physical. I'd love to see him play wing, outside of what we saw down for the whatchamadiddly, the APC, the America's Pacific Challenge. Outside of that, you named him to the side, I wanted to see him play. And the place for him to play would have been Germany, and he wasn't named to that side. And
right,
because he's uncapped, untested. So you need, if you're bringing these players along, to blood them. But one of the things I've talked about my conversation with Alan Yarde. You can be in the extended player training squad sometimes for a long time and never make it.
That's true. That's true. I mean, and that's in a lot of sports. The lifelong practice squad guys, right?
Yeah. And Whippy's that kind of athlete that you want to see play. I mean, there's just he's fast, he's big, he's physical. There's just it's there, but I just want to know what the deal was. I think he'll get capped during the ARC. Same thing with Psalm Wuching.
Mm-hmm.
Wuking. The Spanish interpretation is like poisoned my brain. But I wanted to. I wasn't. The issue with Psalm though isn't him, but it was like moving him to back row. There's so many guys we have that can play 6 at a professional or semi-professional level. I think moving him there was sort of a bad deal because of the amount of depth we have, in amongst loose forwards in general. Cam Dolan, Ben Landry, Tamalau, Palamo, Lamborn, Quill, and a bunch of other people, Since he's uncapped, I don't know he performed really well when he got on the pitch in the Pacific Challenge, but I think when you have versatile athletes like that, you sort of not necessarily let him pick, but he's playing center. I think our center pairing's sort of set, but wanted to see him play fullback. Want to see him play fullback. That's not going to happen. So I think he could get stuck for a while. But I'm guessing with the way we've used the ARC, America's Rugby Championship, he'll get capped and he'll play a bunch there. So we'll get to see him play. So those are like the 2 questions I had there. Really no questions about the second half. We gained some parity, and especially with the way the issues our front row had to deal with. They played pretty well. But should we be happy with the performance?
Performance or result?
Both. In a vacuum, yes. Credit to our athletes, but I'm not talking about what they did. Talking about, as we've talked about earlier in the show, the administration of the game, especially when it comes to high performance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should be cheering a 1-point loss to Georgia. Georgia's population is the size of Kentucky. They play in a test tournament and have played in a test tournament for like 10 years. That is, I guess, the tier 2, quote unquote, 6 nations. And we're only in our 2nd year of the ARC. Like they and the rest of European rugby have developed commercial structures that allow them high-quality matches, high-quality test matches. And for years we were, sitting around, sort of us and Canada. We're the leaders of North American rugby, and we're sitting there sort of begging for, fixtures and development of commercial property. So you have the Churchill Cup, right? So they had Canada, us, the Saxons, so England A, you know what I'm saying? We haven't developed the commercial structures previous to the last 2 years that guaranteed us high-level test rugby and revenue over a period of years. That's, my biggest criticism of this. So many people are happy with the result. I mean, we went overseas, teams higher ranked than us, put on a good showing. Well, actually, no. Yeah, we did put on a good showing, but I saw how we lost the game. But so if the administration support had been there, we would have had our players would have been drilled. Hell, we wouldn't have lost our coach. Mitch did a lot of things. I understand, we attempted to save some money and asked him to renegotiate for a lower sum. I get it. I got it. Good to go. No issues. And he was given a better deal than he had. But if our house was in order, we would, over the past 10 years, we would have been able to get a coach of Mitch's caliber every time we needed one. Or keep a coach of Mitch's caliber every time we needed one. That's the kind of things I'm talking about. And so we never assemble our team outside of match windows. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't, an off-season assembly for 3 days, like England does, out of window, like 3 quarterly assemblies, mini camp, bring them in. Bring in your top 40 guys. Coach gets to talk. Coach gets to, run the boys through conditioning tests. Then they go out there and scrimmage. Learn the system, drill. That's the stuff that I'm talking about.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how to add anything to it, but it'd be kind of redundant.
Well, I mean, so I'm coach and I say to the high performance manager, I need this money so that I can assemble the boys. High performance manager goes to the CEO and says, boss, we need this money so that we can assemble the team, so that we can perform better, whatnot.
Right.
Where does the boss go?
Good question.
Because right now, the boss doesn't control the commercial arm.
Right. Which is interesting because I think unless RIM has been bought, the RFU has been bought out of RIM. What does that 500 million pounds mean for RIM?
For which? Oh, you mean like so?
So the RFU owns what, 20% of RIM or something?
No. They don't own 20%. They own like
something. I know it's some percentage.
They own like a 10% chunk, something like that. It was for 2 million pounds.
So for 2 million pounds, the valuation.
It's like Harlequins is in for like 2 million pounds plus 2 million pounds in the Rugby Channel, and then CSM is in for some money. Some euros, and then you have some undisclosed
black box.
You could probably figure out who, but undisclosed American investors.
Right. So,
some angel donors that have been very generous in the past.
I was wondering, like, I haven't gone. Admittedly, I haven't read in detail.
I'm not gonna name names because that's just not cool. But
right,
if you're deep in the American rugby community, you know who it is.
right.
That's all I'm saying.
I've read, but I've read in detail the plan. But I'm curious if RIM features at all in the RV plan, like anywhere.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I literally think the RFU, depending on who you listen to, they have this diabolical plan to keep us down and whatnot.
The colonization of American rugby.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, George is like, man, crazy George. He sounds less crazier and less crazier every day.
Oh no, I mean, if he had better delivery, more people would agree with him. I mean, he hasn't lied. Like that's one thing I can't accuse him of, you know.
No. I mean, but
you know,
I say, you know, I don't know about Harlequins, but I say the RFU's money was charity. That's what I think. Like, here's some money, go away.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hired Nigel away, and you know the ship was burning. And a lot of those fires have been put out, but we ran fast and loose for 10 years, and it was not a good deal.
And things have come to roost as a result.
So they're an investor. So so their 450-pound plan fit into this? They're investing 198 million pounds into community rugby. Outside of that, in that plan, like, that's non-gender specific.
Mm-hmm.
As part of that plan, they're investing 10 million. And this is a 4-year plan as part of their, like, I'm sure is a 12-year plan, right? Because their last strategic plan culminated in hosting a World Cup. And then the tactical piece of that was winning the World Cup, and they ended up obviously not. A bunch of people lost some jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So for those at home that are following, so you got almost 200 million pounds being invested in community rugby. The RFU is buying land, building pitches, grants, everything. 10 million pounds over the next. This is outside of whatever money they've invested into the Tyrrell's Premiership, which is currently a three-year plan. They're investing, I think it's like 2.4 million pounds per year over the course of it. And that's going to, it's subsidizing somebody's salaries. I don't know. Some people say it's subsidizing players. Some people say it's subsidizing coaches. Either way, subsidizing operations costs of, the Tyrrell's Premiership.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is outside of that plan. They are investing 10 million pounds over the next 4 years into engaging with 100,000 more women. And I don't just mean like engaging as in, oh, they know about women's rugby now, they're kind of interested. No. So they want to double their women's player population. Think about this. There's 25,700 from U5 or U4 to senior, whatever age, SIPP player, as we say, SIPP. They don't really pay SIP. Theirs is way different. It's like you pay to your club pays to the county, and the county pays to the RFU, and you still get a membership card. Good to go. But to increase their female membership of players alone by 25,000 over the next 4 years. And that means further engagement of 75,000 women as volunteers, club officers, officials, administrators of the game. They're trying to get 100,000 more women involved in the game.
That's a big deal.
That 10 million pounds is our operational budget this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then
if we could be serious if we wanted, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah, so then they're spending like 200 million pounds on professional rugby development. So their budget is half high performance, half dominance of professional rugby. And that would probably be lower if they weren't subsidizing men's contracts.
Mm-hmm.
For those that don't know, I don't know what I think the sum is like 25,000 pounds. I'm not sure. I might be smoking dope. But for every England qualified player that plays in the Aviva Premiership, and I think the RFU Championship, not sure. Maybe it's just the Aviva Premiership. They get a sum from the RFU. So it's not a hard cap like the Pro 14 unions have on foreign players, but they're encouraged not to have foreign players via salary subsidization. So, I think that's all I got, man.
Yeah.
We've covered the tactical stuff. We covered some strategic and operational issues that get us to 1-1. I thought we were going to go 0-2 because I didn't think we were set up to effectively do a 7-game series with an interim staff. It sort of felt like – did it sort of feel like this is an extended camp for the ARC?
Yeah, I can't think of it of being much else. I mean, you have to pay for a camp. You have to pay to play matches. Well, okay. There you go. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So
I mean, they're gonna get more out of playing competition together than kind of a half-cocked assembly.
Yeah.
And we need to get more on people being legitimately tested. That's really what they needed to see. Because you can, especially the domestic guys, the prop from Life West, etc. We got to see what we throw them to the Sharks. Can they swim? The rest is development. After that, should we? They're asking the question: who should we develop and who should we figure out can gel?
Yeah. So, that's about it. For I don't know. Maybe when we get this women's coaching hire, we hop over to the Bible Rugby Show. We talk about that. But that is what we got for the Autumn International recap. And the strategic and operational issues are not going away anytime soon. So we're probably going to talk about those again. So that's what I got. All right.
That, folks. Thank you, Castro. Thank you, folks. Thank you, folks at home. You guys take it easy. Enjoy the rest of your holiday.